Welcome to Mr. Paul's Pantry. I'm Mr. Paul. Nice to see you all back here again. But if you're new, a very warm welcome. Now today my recipe is something that is truly British but is eaten all over the world. It is actually an apple crumble. And apple crumbles were really a product of World War II. When things were rationed, people didn't have enough ingredients to make pastry to make a pie. So what they did was they made the pastry, and then instead of rolling it out to make a lid for a pie or a base, what they did was they crumbled it up on top of the apples or the fruit, whatever they had, so that everybody got a little bit, but it wasn't actually using many ingredients. So that's how it came about. So I'm going to show you the ingredients now here, and what we need is first of all apples. I'm using 4 Granny Smith apples here. I've tried other things, but I think apples are very difficult to come by, especially Bramleys and things like that, if you don't live in England. You can get Granny Smiths almost anywhere, so that's why I'm recommending I use those. 4 Granny Smiths. I'm using sugar, flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, the rind and juice of some juice of the lemon, not all of it. Half a teaspoon, sorry, should I say? No, I beg your pardon. Quarter of a teaspoon of ground cloves. Some unsalted butter, and my special little ingredient is some cider. So there we are. We'll get on with making the crumble now, and I hope you enjoy it. First of all, we're going to prep the apples. So we'll peel the apples first. There we are. Just do these quickly. I'll rush through this process. You don't want to sit watching me peel apples all afternoon or evening or whatever time it is where you are. I don't know how you peel and core your apples, but I find this the easiest way and the least wasteful. I watch some so-called celebrity chefs on television peeling and chopping things. They appear to throw away more than they actually use. So anyway, we'll speed through this again. Now we're going to cut the apples into smallish pieces. There we are, about an inch pieces, that's all. We don't want very small tiny pieces, and we don't want great big lumps sticking out of the top of the crumble either. There we are, that should do us nicely. So now we're going to zest the lemon. If you haven't got a zester like this, you can use a very fine grater, or if necessary you can use a potato peeler and then shred it up very, very fine. Okay, but I use this little zester, which is quite handy. So we need the zest of 1 lemon and the juice of half a lemon. I'm just running that through the sieve just to catch the seeds. I don't want to be picking those out afterwards. And there's the juice of half a lemon without the seeds. Next goes in the sugar, followed by the 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. Some people like to use cinnamon. I don't use that at all. I use cloves. And in goes the cider. Then we're going to give them all a nice little mix. First of all, light the gas, and we're going to warm those up now and let them start cooking for about 5 or 6 minutes. What I am going to do is I'm going to put the lid on. That way we will keep them nice and moist. Okay, now that's been 5 minutes cooking the apples, and depending on which apples you're using, you may get quite a lot of liquid out of them. You may not get very much, because don't forget we've only put that very small amount of 50 millilitres of cider in. But I've got quite a bit of juice in there, as you can see. So what I'm going to do, because I don't want to waste that, so here I've got a teaspoonful of corn flour, cornstarch if you want to call it that, and a tablespoon of cold water. Mix that into a little slurry, pop that in, turn up the gas, and that will just thicken the juice in there so it doesn't make your crumble topping go all soggy. I'll show you that in a moment when it's... Can you see now how it's thickening up the juice there? Can you see? Now what we need to do now is we need to take that off the heat, and notice the apples haven't fallen down to a mush like an apple sauce. They will do if you use all Bramley apples. I only use, if I use Bramleys, I use just a few Bramleys and the rest Cox's Orange Pippin or something like that if I'm in England. Here in Spain I can't buy anything like that, so I've told you I only use Granny Smiths. They need to go now to one side and left to cool, and we'll get on with making the topping. I'm going to put in first of all the flour plus the half a teaspoon of baking powder. Please note, this will not work properly if you use self-raising flour, because there's too much baking powder in the self-raising flour to make this work. So I'm using plain flour, all purpose, and a half a teaspoon of baking powder. And then in goes 100 grams of butter. So it's 200 of flour, 100 of butter. And we're going to rub that in now with our fingers. It's not necessary for this little bit of paste, topping to put it into a mixer. You can do it in your food processor if you want, but we'll just break it up, get it incorporated with the flour. And what we're looking for is rough looking breadcrumbs. We're not looking for something smooth like sand, because if you do, when your crumble comes out of the oven, the top will be smooth like sand. It won't be crumbly at all. So we're getting it all mixed in there nice. Now you can see that it's nice and crumbly. I'm going to mix in now the sugar. Now I have a little secret when I make my topping. Normally people who make crumbles would just put that on top now as it is. Not me. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of cold water, and we start to just fluff that around. We don't want to squeeze it, squash it. We don't want to squash it together like a pastry, but it will start to form clumps. Can you see that in the bowl? I'll just show you. Just get it off my fingers. You can see that in the bowl there. It's just starting to form clumps. So it's not going to be a smooth powdery topping. It will be a nice crunchy topping. So we'll get that into the get the apples into the bowl and get this on top. Now you may also like to try my homemade apple pie. If you follow the little eye icon, I'm not sure whether it's in this top corner or that top corner, if you press on that sometime, you will take you to my recipe for making the apple pie. which is delightful. And you can enjoy that with either homemade ice cream, which I have a recipe on there as well for on my website, or some homemade custard. So let's get on and get this crumble together now. Right, now I'm going to use this oven-proof dish. You can see inside it's a bit crazy, a bit like me. I do get comments on most of my videos saying how old my equipment looks. Well, I can tell you I've got very little modern equipment in my kitchen. In fact, this dish I'm using here, to my knowledge, is 40 years old, as far as I know. So that's going to have the apples in there. So off we go. Apples. And you can see how now the juice has thickened right up, so it's not going to make the topping soggy. Level it out. And now for the crumble topping. We're going to put on top here. Spread it all around. If you see any very large clumps, you can break them up if you want, but I'm trying to work left-handed here for the camera. I'm sorry about that. I can't do it. Okay, so there we are. We're going to just smooth that over. A couple of large lumps there we don't want. Can you see what I meant about the nice little lumps? Those will be lovely and crunchy. Now this is going to go in the oven now, set at 200 degrees for 30 minutes. And I'll be back to show you the result. Well, there it is. You can see it nice, crumbly, crunchy, and still bubbling straight from the oven. I'm going to let that cool for a short while, and then we're going to have a taste. Now we'll see what it's like. And here we have the nice creamy homemade custard. I think you've got to agree that looks very, very inviting. Going to have a little taste now. It's absolutely delightful. Absolutely delicious. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's very, very hot in here today. I'm glad to get it finished. So go underneath the video if you've liked it, give it a thumbs up for me, and leave any comments or questions underneath. I'll answer them as soon as I get round to it. If you haven't subscribed already, press the subscribe button, and when you do, you'll see a little bell icon at the side. If you click on that, it'll give you a message every time I put a new video up, so you won't miss one. Well, Mr. Paul saying bye for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye!